The president's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, he took some time out before going to prison to do an interview with ABC News and revealed quite a bit about not only what he did under his employ with Donald Trump, but also what Donald Trump knew while it was going on. Here's the first excerpt.
He's saying very clearly that he never directed you to do anything wrong. Is that true?
I don't think there's anybody that believes that. First of all, nothing at the Trump organization was ever done unless it was run through Mr. Trump. He directed me, as I said in my allocution, and I said as well in the plea, he directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters, including the one with McDougal, which was really between him and David Pecker, in order to protect him. I gave loyalty to someone who truthfully does not deserve loyalty.
He was trying to hide what you were doing, correct?
Correct.
And he knew it was wrong?
Of course.
So there's something about the combination of him talking about loyalty in that way and in that particular accent that makes me naturally not trust him. But what he is saying is important. He is saying that it was not just that. I mean, the argument is that he just went out and did this. Either he didn't know it was illegal, or he did it without ever cluing in Donald Trump that it was illegal, and Donald Trump just went along with it because he was a lawyer that's such a nice guy that he went out and paid off the mistresses without the president having to know anything about the crimes that were being committed.
Yeah, so the reason why that's super important is because you need intent to prove that Donald Trump committed an illegal act. So if he didn't know about it, well, then you don't have intent. But if he knew about it, but did not know that it was illegal, well, that's more of an open. It's not really an open question. Fox News is trying to make it an open question. But here, Michael Cohen's saying, did he know? Yeah, he was in the room. He personally directed me to make the payments. And did he know it was wrong? Of course he knew it was wrong. And he's like, think about it. He ran a small operation before. He claims it's multi-billion dollars, et cetera. It's not remotely that much, but it's okay. Even if you think that, it was still, as a matter of staffing, was a very small business, just a handful of people that worked in the Trump organization. And so Michael Cohen talks about he just bark out orders and everybody would immediately do it. And so the idea that you would make a $130,000 payment and a $150,000 payoff, those two different separate things, without checking with Donald Trump, who runs 2-bit scams to rip people off $5,000 at a time, right. Inconceivable. And besides which, you don't need to think it's conceivable or not. You have the witness here telling you, no, he told me very specifically to do it, and he definitely knew that it was wrong.
And if you know very powerful people, they generally surround themselves with sycophants, right? And Donald Trump is about as guilty of that as anyone. And you can draw the comparison to the Nixon White House too, because that is exactly what happened. And a lot of people find this guy, Michael Cohen, distasteful. They don't like him. They don't want to have a soft spot for him. But when you have somebody who's kind of turning state's evidence in this way, that's always going to be the type of person it's going to be, right? I mean, John Dean, when he came out and he went against the Nixon White House in 1974, the same thing happened, right? So I think that you have to look at the body of what these people say, and they say it about powerful people, and powerful people always know what's going on.
Yeah, so we're going to get to this in a second too, but look, to Michael's point real quick, a lot of times the mob bosses go under because a hitman turned on them. Now, a hitman might have killed 10 guys, but along with other witnesses or corroborating evidence, you go, yeah, I don't like the hitman, but he's telling the truth about the mob boss, so I'm gonna find the mob boss guilty. So you don't have to like Michael Cohen at all to see if it's true or not. And so the part we're gonna get to is the corroborating evidence.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of people look at him and think this is a guy that has proven that he's a liar. He still comes off as pretty much a liar. So why should anyone trust him? And they get into it.
Guilty to lying to Congress.
Yes.
So why should we believe you now?
Because the special counsel stated emphatically that the information that I gave to them was credible and helpful. There's a substantial amount of information that they possess that corroborates the fact that I am telling the truth.
Yeah, just by itself, he has the access that in other situations might imply that you could trust what he's saying, but he is a demonstrated liar. So if he just says something and there's no corroborating evidence, it doesn't really count for much. But both the Mueller team and also the federal prosecutors working in New York, which are not directly affiliated with them, both of them say that they have other sources of information that confirm what he's saying.
Yeah, so in terms of the known liar, We're really having this conversation? Who's the other guy in the equation? The biggest liar any of us has ever known, Donald Trump. Right. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump would go, he has no credibility, hilarious, hilarious. Now, so before we even get to the corroboration, think about the motivations. Why, if they didn't do it, why would Michael Cohen jump up and go, I'd like to serve 3 years in prison, okay? Right. And so I'm gonna turn in evidence that isn't true. I'm just gonna make things up so I can go to prison for no reason.
Right.
Because why? I wanna implicate Trump for what, right? Whereas the other guy has all the reason in the world to lie. He's the president. If he committed this act, he doesn't want people to know. He could be impeached. So that's point one. But all these things add on top of another. When any of them by themselves are enough, in my opinion, to be conclusive. But finally, the most important thing is the corroborating evidence. Why did Michael Cohen flip in the first place? Because they raided his office and his home and his hotel room, and they got all the tapes, they got all the documents, so they already had him. Why did the National Enquirer, that had been supporting Donald Trump for years upon years, also flip? David Pecker is a really good friend with Donald Trump. That's why he helped make the hush payments and bury those stories. Why did he flip? Because Michael Cohen had a document explaining the deal that National Enquirer had with Donald Trump to make these illicit payments. They already had them, even without the witnesses. The witnesses are on top of the documents and the recordings. So with those two things corroborating one another, there's no question at all. Donald Trump 100% did it.
Yeah, I mean that's true. And one just to follow on that. I mean, and I think you sort of touched on it, Cenk. When you have somebody in a witness stand who's turning evidence, who is cooperating with the prosecution to get a better deal, it's always going to be somebody who's there because they did something wrong. Yeah. And it's really important that you often discredit that person if he's a lonely person or she's a lonely person in a witness stand, right? This is a guy who's sitting in front of George Stephanopoulos telling you that the reason I'm believable is because everything points to my believability. There's so much supporting documentation, so many reported accounts that it makes it almost unimpeachable, ironic word.
I want to go to one more video though, because in the interview it came up this weird reference that Donald Trump made on Twitter when talking about the sentencing to Michael Cohen's family, which seemed a bit out of place and odd, and they spoke about that.
He knows the truth. I know the truth. Many people know the truth. Under no circumstances do I want to embarrass the President of the United States of America. The truth is, I told the truth. I took responsibility for my actions. And instead of him taking responsibility for his actions, what does he do? He attacks my family. The only thing he can do is to tweet about my family. He
said in the tweets, he repeated in an interview later on, that basically he says, his claim, you're lying about him to protect your wife, to protect your father-in-law.
Inaccurate. He knows the truth. I know the truth. Others know the truth. And here is the truth. The people of the United States of America, the people of the world, don't believe what he's saying. The man doesn't tell the truth.
We can confirm that.
Yeah. Well, look, on that note, I think we've hit a tipping point. I could be wrong. It's just my sense of it. That I think even Republican voters know that Donald Trump has trouble with the truth. And so they could say, oh, the press is being mean to him and they're the enemy of the people and they live in their alternate reality. But they know that he slept with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, even though to this day he denies that he actually slept with them. He says, I did pay them, because if he says he didn't pay them, that's definitely criminal, because it would be somebody else contributing to his campaign above the limits and him directing them to do so, right? He says, yeah, I paid them, but I paid them for nothing, because I felt like it, and it had nothing to do with the election. No one believes that. I don't care how much you're in the MAGA alternate universe, you don't believe that, okay? And so, the jury, if you will, is in on Donald Trump being a massive liar.
But it was in before he became president.
I know, but that was to us, Michael.
I know, no, it's not just to us. I think that you talk about the tipping point. I hope you're right, but I think that it was not just to us. It was people who said, oh, I don't like a lot about his personality, but I like what he wants to do in Washington. So they knew that about this guy. It's like, what's the old? We are who they were, who they thought we thought they were, right?
Yeah, he's like the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he's who we thought he was.
Yeah, they are who they thought. Sorry, John, but that's exactly right. So I'm dubious but hopeful that when you say tipping point, it's a tipping point. But I don't see why among his supporters. Now, if you go to Congress, you could say, well, maybe they're going to see it now. Maybe there will be some sort of an epiphany there. Nothing shows me that that's yet happening, and that's why I think there needs to be more.
Well, look, we're going to do this later in the show as well, but Chris Christie not taking the chief of staff position, and so many others. I mean, it's arguably the most desirable position in Washington outside of the presidency, and no one's willing to take it.
No, he assigned it to Mick Mulvaney today, acting chief of staff. Acting, right?
Yeah, and he had to assign it to him. So. And the Republicans flouting him on Saudi Arabia. It's a small data point, but it's a data point. But the chief of staff one is a bigger one. No, I think that the Republicans are looking around like when is the shoe going to drop? And in terms of, do the Republicans in Washington know he's a liar? The actual politicians, oh, they know for a fact. I mean, they could say anything they want on TV, but that jury came in a long time ago. Yeah. You couldn't find one Republican on Capitol Hill that if you took him off the record and had a private, honest conversation with him that says, oh no, Donald Trump always tells the truth. Yeah. No one believes that. Okay, last part of this that I thought to be interesting, not related to the criminal actions here, but I'm just gonna pause to note, we all understand several witnesses and corroborating evidence that the president clearly committed a felony. Yeah. So, I mean, how could the handwriting not be on the wall? I mean, at a bare minimum, his percentage chance of being impeached is, we're on the board. I'm not saying that he's definitely gonna get impeached because there is no limit to the weakness of the Democratic Party. I'm not saying he's definitely gonna get convicted, but if you think that's not a possibility at this point, again, you're on a different planet. So everybody in Washington is making calculations about whether he survives. That's the conversation we're having. Now the fun last additional point. Cohen said, it's not like Trump Organization where he would bark out orders and people would blindly follow what he wanted done in the White House. He's saying there's a system here. He doesn't understand the system. Now that's his personal lawyer that's been with him for a long time. And he's saying, yeah, I work with the guy. He just doesn't understand how the American system of government works. He thinks it's like the old days. You come into the office and you go, okay, you do this, all right, and you're loyal to me, okay? And if we break a crime, we break it together, and you back me up, okay? And then you do this, and I do executive orders, and if I get whatever, courts, what the hell are courts, right? I told you, he's just too stupid to understand incredibly simple concepts. Yeah. He's 2 years in, he still doesn't know how our government works. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.